Our patient in this study received ibrutinib as a third-line treatment, and there is a recent study published in 2017, which is a relatively large phase 2 study in patients with marginal zone lymphoma. This was a study whose first author was Dr. Noy, and this phase 2 study enrolled 66 patients with marginal zone lymphoma. All subtypes of marginal zone lymphoma were allowed to enroll. The vast majority of patients, about close to 50% of them, had extranodal marginal zone lymphomas. Another 20% or so, 25% or so had splenic marginal zone lymphomas, and the remaining 15 or so percent of patients, 15-20% of patients, had nodal marginal zone lymphomas. And what they found is that the drug was active in this disease, and had about a 48% response rate for all patients, with a median progression-free survival of 14 to 15 months, with a median overall survival that was not met. In patients who responded, the duration of response was prolonged, and the median duration of response was actually not met in this study that had a median follow-up at the time of publication of about 19 months. And so, based on this data that enrolled one of the studies with the largest amount of patients with marginal zone lymphomas that are enrolled, ibrutinib received accelerated approval for patients with marginal zone lymphoma in a relapsed refractory setting after a prior therapy containing rituximab. I think what's important about the duration of response as well as the progression-free survival and the response rates is really looking this in context of this being a single agent. The dose that was used was 560 milligrams. That's the dose we use in mantle cell lymphoma. And basically, when we look at this as a single agent and compare it to other drugs that were used in this type of setting, we see very similar response rates. And so while this duration of response in the PFS does not necessarily equate to what we see in diseases such as CLL, this is a different disease entity, obviously. And when we're comparing it to other drugs that have been studied in smaller patient populations, the response rates are very similar. They're robust. The drug is well tolerated, and many patients at this point in time, after they've had 2 lines of chemoimmunotherapy, let's say, are looking for somewhat easier options that might get durable responses and deeper remissions.